Hi, I'm Dr. Julie Webb of LitCentric.com. Well, for those of you who don't know me, I am a former teacher turned literacy consultant, and I have some ideas to share with you about how to do guided reading in this remote online kind of mess that we've got here. And I've actually designed this video specifically for the teachers who normally work with me in professional learning trainings and coaching that I do. And those teachers, you know who you are, and I miss you, and I hope things are going well for you. But I also realize that there may be some other people who are watching this video and trying to get some ideas. And so I just wanted to give you a little bit of background of who I am, Dr. Julie Webb, and my website is LitCentric.com, and I try to offer as many resources online there that I can, and hoping to add more soon. So in this video, I'm going to share my screen with you and actually walk you through what I think could be kind of a patch-up job for what guided reading could look like in these online remote teaching and learning times. Now, this is not going to resemble the guided reading that we know and love that we're used to doing with our kids, but I'm going to show you how we can make some slight modifications to our lesson planning and a tool that I recommend that you use that I think could make things a little bit easier, more straightforward for you, so that we're not relying too heavily on technology and all these different pieces. I know there's a lot of great tools out there, and the things that I'm recommending here on this video are definitely not the only things you could be using, and I know many of you are far more technologically advanced than I am and probably use a lot of these tools all the time. So just take this with a grain of salt. Think about the modifications that I'm recommending to how we normally go about doing things, where we can make some adjustments and where we need to try to focus our attention. And I think we can do a good job of meeting the needs of our students and at least maintaining the reading levels that they've already achieved this year, and hopefully carry them through the summer until we can see them again soon. So let's take a look at my screen and I'll share with you what I've put together for you today. Okay, so I have here a quick slide deck that I put together. I apologize, there's going to be a lot of text on a lot of these slides, but I thought it'd be worth it just to put it all in one document in a PDF like this, and I'll go ahead and upload it to litcentric.com. In the shop tab, there'll be a link there in the freebies, and you can download this yourself, and that way all the text and all the things that we mentioned are already typed on there for you, so you don't feel like you have to take a bunch of notes right now. So hopefully that's helpful. I'm also going to show you a couple websites that I mentioned here today. Now, of course, there are so many other tools that you could be using besides the one I'm mentioning here. And if you prefer to use something else, of course, feel free. I just wanted to make sure that you had like a go-to that you could start with right away. And then in the meantime, we're going to learn a lot over the next few weeks, working with our students remotely, and some of the other resources that continue to be made available for teachers, especially a lot of companies doing things for free, which is fantastic. And even some other things that are now becoming available even for purchase. There's a lot of great options out there now. So hopefully you'll get some ideas to get you started with how I've modified things today. And then, of course, feel free to make them better, because you guys are very creative, very smart people. You know how to do that. So hopefully this will get you up and going. And so the file is going to be called Teaching Guided Reading Remotely. And like I said, I'll put it on litcentric.com in the shop tab, and please share it widely with anyone who you think would benefit from it. So the first two resources I want to mention are the ones we're going to look at here as I'm sharing my screen. They're both from learningatozee.com. One is Reading A to Z, which is the resource for teachers, and the other is Raz Kids, which is the student portal, and those work in conjunction with one another. And I know a lot of you are very familiar with these resources. They've been around a really long time. I remember when Reading A to Z was this tiny little itty-bitty website that barely had any books on it. And now, of course, there's all these different, vocabulary and science and all these different options. It's really neat to see how it's grown. But they've done an amazing job of having some quality level text for students to access in a lot of different formats, and they've always had these available this way. But the beauty of it right now is that they're giving classroom teachers access to everything for free for the remainder of the school year. So really big kudos to them. I'm very impressed by that. There's so many companies doing that. And I hope that we all remember the folks that are helping us out the most right now, because those are the companies and the people we really want to be following when things finally get back to normal. So we're going to be taking a look at those websites today in just a moment. Let's actually make this a little bigger so we can see. Okay, so our goals for guided reading remotely, we are not expecting ourselves or our students to engage in the way that we usually do with guided reading. Okay, so that's completely off the table. But we're going to focus on these 3 goals because if we focus here and put our attention on doing these things well, they will lead to very quality learning experiences for kids. Okay, so first we're going to make sure that kids have meaningful, quality literacy activities that they're engaging in. So there's nothing wrong with, apps out there and, even, a worksheet or 2. There's even a lot of folks are promoting really what are just digital worksheets, students moving things around and sorting and things like that. Those are all perfectly fine activities, but they really are not actual reading and actual writing. So we want to make sure that kids are getting a heavy dose of actual reading and writing, and that those other activities are really just meant to supplement and engage students, much like we would in some literacy centers. We wouldn't make every literacy center a game situation or just a straight up phonics activity. We want students actually reading and writing. So if we keep that quality really high, we're actually also going to keep their engagement. So that's a good news. The other thing is that we're not using this time to try to promote these really difficult skills or try to advance students into any different levels or anything like that. We are just striving to maintain the skills that they've already earned with us. We've worked really hard all year to get kids where they are, and if we can maintain those skills and keep them reading and writing, then we've done our jobs. And finally, we want these reading and writing experiences to stay really positive because our kids are really missing us right now. A lot of them are, engaging in things for the first time, a lot of technology pieces, a lot of things are going on in their homes, and there's just kind of general anxiety. So if we can keep our interactions with them really positive and help them continue to see reading and writing as positive, fun things to experience, then again, we've done our jobs. So the basic tools that I recommend, first you need some web conferencing software. That just means something like, Google Meet or the Microsoft has one. I guess we're not supposed to use Zoom right now because security issues, but whatever that your district is recommending, use that. If they haven't recommended something, just find something that's free to access. Most of them right now are free. That web conferencing software is really for you to have some face-to-face time with students. Some of you that may not be possible, so don't worry about that. But I am going to be talking about, trying to do some type of modified guided reading if you have access to that. But there's other parts here that you can definitely access and use, and they'll still be very beneficial to students. So just take everything with a grain of salt. Hopefully you understand that, and just do the very best you can with the tools that you have access to and that your students have access to. The other tools here, these are offline tools, right? So if you grabbed a whiteboard, before you left school, even if you don't have a whiteboard, get a nice pad of paper that has real, bright, clean paper, and get yourself some thick, dark markers, whether it's for whiteboard or paper, because if you're actually demonstrating something to students, of course there's digital whiteboards and things you can type on the screen and all that stuff, but you know what? Sometimes it's just faster to grab a piece of paper and a thick marker, hold it up, and just write something and show students on the screen using your webcam. I just recommend just doing the basic, most simple version of everything, because then the focus is on the students learning and not so much on you mastering new technology tools. You still have time to get better at those things and play around with them. For now, just get up and going. And so you want that thick, dark marker so that students can see really clearly what you've written. And if you ask them to write things, you're going to want them to also use a nice dark marker because pencil and ballpoint pen don't show up very well at all on camera. If you grabbed magnetic letters before you left school, or if you have some at home, great, use them. If not, totally fine. You can do everything you need with a marker and a piece of paper. And you also, of course, need access to guided reading books. Now, this is where the Reading A to Z and RAS Kids comes in, because we're going to assign students digital guided reading books. Now, normally, we actually know researchers are really starting to look into how students process digital text versus paper, traditional text, and the processing does look different. So don't be surprised if your students behave a little differently or their running records look a little bit different, which we will talk about today, because students tend to scan and use digital text kind of with more viewing skills than they do actual processing of literacy skills like they would with a paper pencil kind of book. So don't have the same expectations for them, but at least we're giving them quality things to read, because we know a lot of our students at home don't have these things. So this is a great option for us to use. And again, it's free. So any option similar to this, please use it. Now, for those of you who've done training with me, you know that this is the very simple, small lesson planning template that I normally use when I plan guided reading. And for those of you who are new to it or just want a refresher, I like to use a very small template like this. Normally this fits 4 to a page because I like to keep my notes on students on a separate page and my lessons on a different page. And this way I can plan 4 lessons all on one sheet of paper, and I can see over time what we're practicing, what I need to go back to, things like that. Plus, the beauty of having a very tiny planner is that you can only plan a tiny little bit. And we know guided reading lessons are supposed to be really small and really brief. So that helps me stay focused and stay small enough so I don't start teaching a whole group lesson to 5 kids. So here we've got, I list the title, the level, and the date I'm going to teach the lesson. The introduction part is the sentence or two that I'm going to say to introduce the book. Locate is if there's any particular words or phrases or anything at all in the text that I want to make sure students see before they read. That's where I document that. Then after we read are the last 2 boxes, the teaching point. That generally comes from one of the strategic actions that we want readers to take, like monitoring or inferring or analyzing, something like that. And that's also where our discussion happens during that time. And the last part is practice, and this usually alternates between word work and writing. Okay, so that's the basic structure, but we know that guided reading is going to look the same right now. So now here we have a modified lesson planning template. So the modifications I have here in yellow. So the top part, title, and all the information, of course, is the same. Instead of introduction, now we ask students to review, because a key component to doing guided reading in this way remotely is that I'm actually going to assign books to students in advance before I meet with them. I want students to actually be familiar with the text and have read it several times before we come together. And part of that is because it is very difficult to share your screen and have several kids, sharing it with you at the same time and trying to read off the screen, and only one person has control, and it just becomes really difficult. And I know for a lot of you, you're very new to, breakout rooms and assigning students to different texts and making sure that they know how to access that at the same time meeting with you. And I just think it's a lot to ask of students and a lot to ask of their families. So I say give them time to read it ahead of time, and we will modify our lesson accordingly. So instead of introducing the book, we're just going to review it. We're going to do a quick summary about it. Kids can tell me what they recall from it. And then I can actually do locate again and just review a couple of things that I want to make sure they understood, or, words and phrases that were difficult, just like how I normally would, just knowing they've already had a little familiarity with it. But that's fine. We can still do some locating. The teaching point can stay the same. They're more familiar with the text, but that's fine. They still need to process it. We still need to discuss it. And this is an area that we can really do a lot of work with students when we're using web conferencing software, because they actually have access to us. So a big portion of our teaching really needs to occur there. Then the practice section, you notice, has 2 parts. The regular practice that's not highlighted is, again, a time for you to talk about writing with them, or to do a little bit of writing during your web conferencing time, or doing a little bit of word work with them. Then the highlighted part that says assigned practice, this is where we can continue students' learning, much like them reading the book before they meet with us. Now they can walk away from this lesson and continue word work practice and continue writing practice, because we can assign them specific things based on this text, and also just general word work things they need to practice, or general writing skills we want them to maintain. And this is a great place for us to differentiate by assigning students different things to practice. So I don't want you to be kind of too hard on yourself. Normally with practice, especially with writing, we do a lot of work directly tied to the text we just read. But in this case, I think we need to free that up a little bit for ourselves, and at least with some of the assigned practice, just go with skills you know would benefit students, and don't worry so much how closely they connect to the text they just read, because our students in this case are going to be reading a lot of different texts all over the place, and tying it all in is not something I think we need to worry about too much. Just, again, keep them engaged in quality reading and writing activities. Okay, so let's build off of this idea of changing introduction to review and assigning additional practice, and let's talk about how this might look when we're working with students. So in the planning side of the guided reading lesson, when you're teaching remotely, of course, again, planning occurs before the students even meet with you. First, you're going to use that modified template if that's a template you like to use. And in this case, I want you thinking about reading levels that actually are at more the independent level for students. This isn't a time to really challenge them. So I think we go with texts that students have a very high level of accuracy with, knowing that they don't have the same level of support from us and they can't see us as often. So this way, they're still working on texts they can read well, and there isn't too much challenge in them because, again, we don't know how much support students have at home. So if a student, let's say, is reading, a level J with you at 94%, well, then maybe the text that you assign to them is more like in the H and I range, just to make sure that they can have a high level of success reading on their own. Next, you're going to select a book to assign to the students, and I'll show you that in just a moment on the website. You're going to then plan using your modified template. You're going to plan what you want to review with them, how you might want to do that when you see them, and also anything that needs to be located like you normally would. And then in the Reading A to Z, there's actually a leveled book lesson, and that's a great place for you to find ideas for teaching points and how you might discuss things with students. We'll take a look at that in a moment. And then also there's different activities in there you can use for the practice portion. Remember, practice is how we refer to word work and or writing. And on that template, we can actually plan some of the ideas that come from the lesson resources section. Again, there's a lot of good ideas in there. They balance out the book that students read really nicely. However, there's always a caveat. You know your students best, and based on how they read that book with you and based on what you know they need, you may certainly deviate from the suggestions listed here on the website, all those resources, because as we know, curriculum is written for the mythical student, right? It's based on the book that was read and it's highly connected to that, but it's less connected to the actual reader because only the teacher can kind of bridge that gap. So definitely deviate anywhere you see necessary, and certainly do not do all the activities I suggest. You won't have time for it and it'll overwhelm students, I think. So just prioritize your time and go with things that they love and things that interest them, because remember, we're keeping this really positive. For the last section of your modified planning template, remember it was the assigned practice. So here's a chance for you to think about word work and writing activities that they can practice on their own when they're not with you. And you can review them later and actually even revisit them next time you guys meet together if you choose to do that. Or you can just provide feedback based on what they turn into you. Maybe you're using something like Google Classroom or another software plan. Just find a way to make sure you're giving quality feedback, because I think for remote teaching, that's one of the hardest things for students, is that they really are working largely on their own. Even if they have good parent support is not the same as teacher support, as we know. And students really, they can't work in a vacuum, right? They've got to get quality feedback from us. And that feedback ends up being done remotely, of course, and asynchronously. So a student turns something in and you check on it at a separate time, and there's lots of writing and dialogue and even videos going back and forth maybe, and less FaceTime, less live FaceTime, okay? Then you're going to notify students at the end of your planning here of which text that you've assigned to them, and make sure they understand that even if there's other texts that they can read, which there will be, that they know which text you're going to be talking about when you meet with them, okay? And right now, I think you should aim to meet with them once a week using this format. Your district probably has some guidelines for you on that as well. But there's, of course, other things to meet with them about. So even if you can just do this once a week with groups, I think you're doing a great job. And if you can do it more, even better. So let's actually take a look at the websites here. Here's Reading A to Z. I just did a little quick 14-day trial because, I'm not a practicing teacher, so I can't get access to the big freebie. But if you go to resources here, leveled text, let's go to all leveled books, and I'll show you in here something I'm noticing. So we can find, let's click nonfiction and see what we get there. Oh, here it is. Okay, so ocean animals. Let's click on this one. And let's take a look at the resources here. So here's the book that she'll be reading, and I'll also be sharing with her. And if you look here, you can actually add it to, you have a virtual filing cabinet. I suggest using that. It's very helpful so you know which ones you've already, assigned and taken a look at. And a couple things to know, there's lots of ways you can download the PDF version, but these are mostly to actually be printed and put into paper books. For your lessons, you're going to want to actually go here to the projectable, because that will actually project it onto the screen if you need to do that for your lesson with students, which you likely will. Anytime, of course, you see the PDF sign here, that's something you can download, and then this folder so you can add it to that, remember that filing cabinet that you have. So in this lesson resources section, you can see here high frequency words they suggest, different words for vocabulary they might need. You can download worksheets. These can all be assigned to your students also if you choose to do that. You can see there's comprehension focus. They have things for phonics and grammar. There's all sorts of things, word work. A lot of these you can see are projectable. So if you choose to use some of these when you're web conferencing with students in that live way, pull these up and project them and have a discussion with them based on what they see on the screen. Those are fabulous resources for you to do that. And it's super easy to do, and it doesn't require you to download a bunch of things. So here, though, in this whole lesson resources section, this is where you can get lots of great ideas to fill out your modified planning template. Okay. And that also, you need to make sure that you assign kids the book, right? So if we go over here to the kids login, this is my daughter's class, and I don't have her, I'm hiding her teacher's name, but here's Natalie's portal. So we click here and we type in Natalie's password, and this is what she sees. This is what her teacher has set up. There's different ways to set this up, but let's go into reading. And here, level up is where she's going to find leveled books that her teachers assigned to her, levels J and K. So you can see here we have 60 tasks left. We haven't even started yet. She's got 0 stars. So we're just going to get started using this resource together. But let's find that ocean book. Here it is. Here's the ocean animal book. So Natalie can pull this up and read it on her own. This is why she needs to know ahead of time from you which book that you've assigned to her. Anything you drop in this portal here, she can read, but she needs to know which one that you're going to discuss with her when you meet with her. So here we've got this little button with the headphones. The book can be read to her, which is great for a lot of kids, and there's nothing wrong with them using that tool right now. And then this actually, if we click here on the actual book, it just projects the book, and it's easy for her to click the next button and turn the page and read it on her own. And actually, this is easy for you to use to project for students if you're meeting with them. But again, you also have the projectable option in the Reading A to Z teacher resources section. Okay, so this gives you a sense of what's available here. There's other tools students can reflect on reading, make comments, they can highlight things, and even record themselves. So play around with that if you haven't done that before. And you may ask your students to use some of those tools as part of their learning tasks and activities that they do without you. And you can check on that. And there's a lot of meaningful ways that students can engage with these texts and these resources. Okay. So let's go back to our slide deck here and talk about how this might play out in a virtual classroom. So again, our first step, students pre-read the text. A lot of folks won't agree with me on that, and really it's okay with me. You can totally change that if you want to. I just think that we need to be easy on ourselves and our kids and just get them reading. And our job is really just to check in with them and do some small teaching. It's definitely less teaching than we're used to, but honestly, our students might end up actually spending more time reading, which we know research says is one of the absolute most important things we can have children do. So we're just kind of, weighing our options here and doing the best we can. So students have pre-read the text, and then you have a time like office hours or something where they're going to meet with you. I suggest meeting with only 2 to 3 students. I think 6 students is way too many for the type of teaching remotely that we're going to do. But a lot of you are more talented than I am with this type of software and things, so experiment with it. And your students, there may be some who do just fine in a larger group, especially some of the older kids and kids maybe who can even handle some of the breakout rooms and having discussions with partners. As they get used to learning this way, you'll probably be able to add more students. So we'll just see how that goes. I think to start, I'd even limit it just to 2 students and just get your feet wet with it. You're going to project the book on the screen, and you're going to follow your modified planning template. Remember, instead of introducing, you're reviewing. So take a look at your notes about how you want to review and do that with students. Go through the locate section. If there's anything you need to locate with them, you can easily advance through that projectable book on the screen and locate things with them. Get students ready to read. Now here, remember, students have already read the book. Hopefully they've read it several times. So in this case, I would actually have students read aloud with you. Think about it as a fluency practice where you would have students almost like a neurological impress method, where you are setting the pace and students are actively trying to keep up with you. It's really just more like a partner read situation. But here you are the model for what fluency should sound like. And you're modeling the proper rate, you're modeling the the phrasing, the pausing you need to do, and all the expression, right? This is a chance for us to do some of that type of practice with students. And because they're familiar with it, they should do this pretty well with you. If not, their running records will probably tell us what's going on with them. Then you move on to the teaching point section that you have in your planning template. So whatever you're discussing that day, whatever point you want to make for strategic actions. And then you move on to the practice section. So remember, the first part of the practice section had some type of practice lesson that you're going to do, whether it's word work or writing. And here you have a chance to project some of those components from reading A to Z. Remember, we saw some of those lesson resources. You might want to use your whiteboard and marker or magnetic letters to model something for them on screen. And then you might also choose to project like a writing prompt or a question, or even type it in the chat, anything to project it for students on the screen. And maybe you get them started doing a little bit of writing. There's no reason why students can't sit and write while everyone's in the same virtual classroom. That's actually a great thing for students to do. And then once they're done writing, they can actually just hold it up to you on the screen. You can snap a photo, take a screenshot of it, and keep it for your records, or ask students to submit it some way in Google Classroom or some other portal that you're using. And feedback on that, you could do feedback right away with students. You could definitely, of course, use that information to plan your next lesson for them and plan some of their independent activities. But also, you can provide feedback to them, again, in whatever portal you're asking them to submit their assignments if you're doing that. Or you can save time at the start of your next session with them in your web conferencing virtual classroom and give some feedback to them at that point. So you can decide how you'd like to do that. All right, so that was our basic lesson there. You can tell it's very modified, but that's okay. Remember, the times are just unprecedented right now, so we're going to do our best. Some tips I have for you when you're teaching online. Keep your groups small. Again, you want something that you can manage, and as you see fit, if you want to make your groups larger, feel free. There's definitely times where students you could have your whole class with you and get them started on something. But for guided reading, let's keep it small and do the best we can with it. Also, remember, most web conferencing software allows you to mute all the kids at once and then unmute selected students as needed. If students are getting on this type of software for the first time and they're excited to see their friends, it gets a little bit wild. They can get so excited. So that mute button can be your friend. I like to do some old school things where instead of asking students to use the fancy technology like send me an emoji and use the chat feature and all these things that our students maybe have never seen before, ask some basic questions and have them show you a thumbs up or a thumbs down on the screen. Just do it quick so that the focus is on the learning they're going to do and it's not so much on the tech that you're using. And then finally, I think out of all of the components of your modified lesson template, I think focusing your time on the actual teaching point book discussion portion is the most important way for you to spend your time with students. The reason is because that is the hardest part for us to actually farm out, right? We can't expect parents to have quality discussions like we would have with students. They don't know how to do these things the way that teachers do, and that's fine. They can have other discussions with students and of course talk about books they read. But this is definitely something where assigning them a discussion piece on their own is just not going to be the same quality as if they had done it with you. So I think your teaching time would be very well spent focusing on discussing the book with them. And also because it's very quality time that your students have with you because they're not seeing you as much and they desperately want to. So a focus there I think would be a great way to spend that time with them on screen. Now, all that said and done, we can still do running records as needed. Running records are actually one of the easier parts to do remotely compared to all the planning and assigning and checking with kids. So the basics for this is in Reading A to Z, there is a collection of benchmarked texts for you to use. And of course, you can do a running record on any text and whether they've read it or not, it's familiar or not. But with the benchmark books, if you choose to use those, I suggest you keep those for the cold read, the unfamiliar read that they've never done before, versus the text that you're assigning to them. Use those for more familiar reading running records because the data is going to be a little bit different from each of those. So protect those benchmark books for the ones that students don't normally see in their collection. So download the book, or in some way make it actually presentable on screen, either project it or download it and show them the PDF, however you can do that. There's also comprehension questions that they suggest. These questions are not the same as a comprehension conversation, but they can give you some thoughts about how you might turn them into a good comprehension conversation. And they also have a running record form with the text printed on it. So if that's still helpful for you, print that out. If not, get your notebook out and just take your running record, as you know how to do on a plain piece of paper. Go ahead and meet with whichever student you're meeting with in that virtual classroom using that web conferencing software like you've done before. If you can, record the meeting with them because as they read to you, you can capture the reading that they're doing and anything that you miss on your running record, you can play it back later. Then your next step is to project the text on the screen somehow and decide whether the teacher is going to control the page turning feature or if you're going to turn that over to the student. I suggest you just doing it yourself because this is a controlled assessment anyways. I don't think that's a big deal. But if you're comfortable turning that over, a lot of web conferencing software allows you to do that. So you decide that for yourself. Then the student starts reading and you take your running record on paper just like you would if they were sitting at the table next to you. Afterwards, have that comprehension conversation. Use the comprehension questions they give you as a starting point and of course modify as needed. I think some of those questions you'll notice don't go as deeply as some that you may be used to asking students, so certainly ask deeper questions. And then you're done. You're going to thank the student and conclude the meeting. And again, you can listen to that recording later as needed and take that time to analyze the running record and use it to inform your remote guided reading instruction. Finally, I have 2 resources I'm very excited to share with you. You remember in the modified lesson planning template, it had that assigned practice section, that very last highlighted piece. And these are 2 resources that I'm creating for you right now as we speak to give you the different assigned practice opportunities that I think are very high quality and represent, again, authentic reading, writing, and more teaching scenarios instead of just everything being a worksheet or a digital worksheet situation. So the first one here is from my Sound Along Phonics program. And that's a program that is originally designed to be, face-to-face in the classroom, like, we're all used to doing. And I always have that program for sale on LitCentric.com on the shop tab. But I've gone ahead and modified it for remote learning purposes. And so it's the same experience students would have if they were live with you, except it can be done on their own. And it's actually a set of learning videos. Now, Sound Along Phonics focuses on 37 different phonemes that are from the Common Core standards. And it starts out with short vowels, it goes into the magic E with long vowels, consonant digraphs, and then a whole different set of chunks, different phonemes, like AY says A, and double E says E, and IGH says I, things like that. So there's a total of 37, and there's also an assessment included that you can do very similarly to the running record, where students just read off the screen and you document which words they know, which ones they don't, and it helps you assign students to a particular set of videos. And this is a great way for you to differentiate the learning experiences students have, again, when they're away from you. And in this case, you can actually download these lessons, and they will, you'll get a PDF file is how it's going to be presented. There'll be links in that file. It'll have all the resources and explanation in there, plus a couple downloadable pieces that you may want to push out to students. But the bulk of it is really links to all the videos. So these will actually be set up in little mini Google slide decks. And each slide deck will have, I think there's 4 or 5 slides in it, and it walks students through exactly what they're supposed to do. And one of them has the main video in there that students follow along with and actually do a making and breaking words activity with the featured sound. They just use paper letters that they make at home, but they follow along and physically do the actual hands-on activity. And so the reason I designed this way, because I didn't want, again, just another digital sort of sorting activity, because a lot of our students don't necessarily have the best technology access at home. And this way, if it's on a slide deck and on a video, they could even use a smartphone to access these lessons. So I made it as accessible as I could, even though we're still relying on some digital and online resources. So those are currently in development. I'm recording lessons as we speak, like I said, and I'll be uploading all those slide decks. If you're interested in that, you can actually click here on this live link, and it will take you to the remote learning page from LitCentric.com, and there's a place for you to sign up there if you're interested, and as soon as it goes live, I'll send you an email letting you know it's live. But yeah, I'm very excited about that. My daughter's been doing these lessons. She's piloted them for me. She's a first grader, and I really watched her carefully and based a lot of the pacing on her ability to manage her materials and things like that. So I think they're going to be very useful for your students. I know they will be, and I think students will have a high degree of success with them. And then the other resource that I've started to create for you is what I'm calling Welcome to Writing. And these are activities that students can easily do at home. They are paper pencil activities. And these are, right now, it's a collection of videos. These are currently housed in 2 places. At LitCentric.com, again, they're in the shop tab. Both of these products, the Sound Along Phonics and Welcome to Writing, are in the products tab. And this one, all the videos are there, as well as any downloadable handouts that may go with them. They are not worksheet based. You do not need a fancy or cute worksheet for every writing task. That's absolutely ridiculous. But there are some downloadables in there, like basic writing paper that, maybe there's a type of writing paper that would be more useful for your students, and they definitely don't have it at home. Or maybe there's a graphic organizer that goes really well with that particular activity. They're very basic. They are not necessary. Students can do these activities on their own. But again, the videos are housed there, and they're also housed on YouTube right now, the LitCentric YouTube channel. I forget how many videos I have. I think maybe 16 of them are already there. And they're designed to give you and parents a chance to think about, a great writing activity, something that students enjoy doing. There's some helpful tips in there about kind of foundational ideas behind writing that I think parents will find helpful. And I continue to add to that every week. So those, again, are there for you right now. So hopefully all these resources are useful to you. Please share them, again, with anyone you think might also benefit. And of course, like I said, I know that you will take these ideas and certainly improve upon them. If you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And you can email me, juliewebb@litcentric.com. And again, you can find me anywhere on social media. I'm at LitCentric, everywhere you look. Don't forget to go to litcentric.com and look at some of the other resources I have there for you. And take good care, get some rest, and have a great day at school.